Welcome to Last Generation Audio Magazine, your source for Bible-centered truth in a turbulent world. Here we share compelling articles that reveal God's love, expose deception, and prepare people for the soon return of Jesus. You are listening to Volume 35, Issue 6.
The Child Preachers of Scandinavia. In the 19th century, when adults were forbidden to preach the soon return of Jesus, God used children instead. By John N. Lofbro. In the summer of 1843 in Sweden, a little girl only 5 years of age, who had never learned to read or sing, sang a long Lutheran hymn correctly in a most solemn manner. And then with great power she proclaimed, "The hour of his judgment is come." She then instructed her family to get ready to meet the Lord, for he was soon coming. The unconverted in the family called upon God for mercy and found pardon. This movement spread from town to town, with other children proclaiming the message. The same movement among children was manifest to some extent in Norway and Germany. Yes, I had to preach. In 1896, while holding meetings in 17 different parts of Sweden, I passed through several places where the children had preached in 1843 and had opportunity to converse with those who had heard the preaching as well as with men who had preached when they were children. I asked one of them, "You preached the Advent message when you were a boy?" He replied, "Preached? Yes, I had to preach. I had no devising in the matter. A power came upon me, and I uttered what I was compelled by that power to utter." In Örebro County, this work spread until the civil authorities, instigated by the priests of the established church, arrested two young boys, Erik Walbaum, 18, and Ole Boquist, 15, to make a public example of them. They whipped their bare backs with birch rods and placed them, with their bleeding wounds, in Örebro prison. When these wounds healed, they took them out of the prison and demanded they cease preaching this doctrine and beat them with rods the second time, opening their wounds afresh. Still they answered, "We will preach the preaching that the Lord bids us." Through the intercession of a prominent lady parishioner in Örebro, King Oscar I told the authorities to let those boys out of the prison and to let the people alone. So the victory for the truth was gained in Sweden. Ole Boquist's testimony. In the year 1843, a religious movement occurred among the people in Karlskoga parish in Örebro län. The leaders in this movement were children and young men who were called rapare. These preached with divine power and proclaimed before the people, with great decision, that the hour of God's judgment had come. In the fall of the same year, I, O Boquist, then 15 years of age, with another young man, Erik Walbaum, 18 years of age, became so influenced by this unseen power that we could in no wise resist it. As soon as we were seized by this heavenly power, we began to speak to the people and to proclaim with a loud voice that the judgment hour had come, referring them to Joel 2:28-32 and Revelation 14:6-7. The people congregated in large numbers to listen to us, and our meetings continued both day and night, and a great religious awakening was the result. Young and old were touched by the Spirit of God and cried to the Lord for mercy, confessing their sins before God and man. But when the priest in the church was apprised of this, many efforts were put forth to silence us, and thus to stop the prevailing religious excitement. But all efforts were unavailing. The sheriff was then requested to cause our arrest, and during 6 weeks, a fruitless search was made to find us in the forest, whither we had fled for refuge. Finally, however, we were summoned to appear before the pastor of the church. Our number had increased so that 40 young men and women presented themselves at the parsonage, where we were submitted to a long trial. All but myself and Walbaum were permitted to return to their homes. But we were arrested, and on the following day were placed in custody in the Örebro prison, where we were associated with thieves, as though we had committed some great crime. On September 22nd, 1896, the sister of Boquist, 72 years of age, attended our meeting at Örebro and told us about the experience of her brother, for she witnessed his whipping, imprisonment, and liberation. She sang for us the hymn that Boquist and Walbaum sang as they walked out of the prison onto the bridge over the moat surrounding that 16th century castle, used as their prison in 1843. The power of the 1843 movement accompanied the testimony and the singing of the hymn. The boy filled with the Bible. A little boy, 8 years of age, who had never learned to read his letters, began to preach the Advent message, quoting many scriptures. The people said, "That boy is just filled with Bible." This circumstance occurred after King Oscar I had spoken in favor of the persecuted ones, so the priest of that place could not get the boy before the court to stop the work. But he told the people to bring the boy before him, and he would expose him and show them his ignorance of the Bible. Before a crowd of people, the priest opened his hymn book and asked the boy to read for him. The boy replied, "I cannot read." But turning his back to the priest, he sang the hymn through correctly, from first to last. The priest, meanwhile, looking on the book in astonishment. The priest said to the lad, "You seem to know everything." The boy replied, "No. We are not always permitted to tell all we do know." The priest then opened the New Testament and said to the boy, "Read for me in this." The boy replied, "I cannot read." The priest inquired, "What do you know about the Bible anyway?" His reply was, "I know where there is a text that has the word 'and' in it 14 times. The priest said, "No, there is no such text in the Bible." The lad said, "Will you please read for me Revelation 18:13? "Yes," said the priest. As he read, the people counted, and sure enough, the word "and" was there just 14 times. The people shouted, "The boy knows more about the Bible than the priest." Much chagrined, the priest dropped the subject and left the people unmolested after that. So, out of the mouth of children, the Lord confirmed his word and brought his truth to the ears of the people whose laws forbade the preaching of any doctrine but that of the established religion. Under the power of God. The children who were thus influenced by this heavenly power were lost to everything around them. They were actually in vision from God and spoke with a power that carried a mighty convicting influence. While under that influence, they would speak with the force and dignity of full-grown men and women. So those who saw it were led to conclude that it was the Lord using them prophetically to utter these solemn truths as promised in Joel 2:28-32. "I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters shall prophesy. Your old men shall dream dreams, your young men shall see visions. And also upon the servants and upon the handmaids in those days will I pour out my spirit before the great and the terrible day of the Lord come." Excerpted from The Great Second Advent Movement by J.N. Loughborough, Review and Herald Publishing Association, 1905. Updated editions available at the Adventist Pioneer Library, applib.org.
Thank you for listening to Last Generation Audio Magazine. For more of our timely and biblical resources, including our print and digital editions, visit our website at lastgen.net and follow us on Facebook and Instagram.